Here's my quote. This is a Sean P. original.
Okay.
Trusting nobody is easier than trying to pick who to trust.
You made that up?
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good.
It's pretty good, right?
Hey, Dill, can we quote that and put it on the bottom with like a dash that
Get
says
like
Sean
one of those
P?
memes with like me thinking with bubbles coming out of my head.
That would be awesome. Welcome to the podcast dedicated to real estate, insurance, and building your business. Join us as we take you along our own business building journeys with additional wisdom from our network of local and national experts. Welcome to Bricks and Risk. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Bricks and Risk. I'm Timothy Michael Garrity I.
And I'm Sean Mooney.
Who the hell are you?
Sean P.
Oh yeah, Sean P. That's right. Awesome. All right, Sean P. Before we get started today, we're going to read another listener review.
Ooh.
And for those who are watching and listening, the best place you can leave a written review so that we can read it on the show is really Apple Podcasts. So I'm going to go ahead and read it. So this one comes from Strauss Mortgage. So great podcast for any entrepreneur, it's titled. So it says, Bricks and Risk is a must listen for anyone looking to dive deep into the nuances of business creation and growth. The hosts have a knack for navigating complex topics with ease, presenting them in a relatable and digestible format. Each episode brims with value, and expert guests dissect their own success stories, setbacks, and strategies relevant to both aspiring and seasoned entrepreneurs. The content is curated to inspire, educate, and provoke thought, making it an essential addition to the podcast library of anyone eager to learn and grow in the entrepreneurial space. Support for this insightful podcast is well-deserved. It's not just a show, but a growing community where shared experiences pave the way for collective success. Damn, bro. What a review. Thank you, Strauss Mortgage. Love it.
Listen. Are you ready?
Are we up? We sitting high now?
No. Listen. If you need a mortgage, call Strauss.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know who Strauss Mortgage is, but we're going to find you. I'm going to find you, Strauss. We're going to get you some business, and the check is in the mail for your review.
I think I know who it is, but I'm not going to reveal any of my secrets on the show.
I'm going to go
leave it a mystery. I'm going to let you figure it out. And then if you need a clue, let me know. I'll give you a couple breadcrumbs.
I am Strauss. I'm coming for you.
Nice.
I'm going to find you.
Love it. All right. What are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about partnerships, business,
Nice.
versus running non-partnerships.
Yeah. Well, this is great. So partnerships in general it's a very broad topic in business. You know, someone could talk about it. It's like, hey, I get a partnership with my significant other and they help my business. Or someone could say, hey, I went into business with someone else, someone I didn't know, and they wanted to do the same thing. Or someone kicked up a lot of money for the partnership, and that's why we got into business together. So why don't we start with you on this one? Because with Mooney Insurance Brokers, you started out solo. You were a team of one, day one. Now you have a few people on your team. I would say go back to that time. Why was doing it solo the direction you went when you started?
Yeah. So at the time, it really wasn't, I would say it wasn't a decision to be made. So when I was making the decision to start the agency, it wasn't even a thought at that time to choose.
Like it wasn't even an option.
Yeah. There was no other party that I could find or go to. I did have many, many conversations with different agency owners about, starting the agency and how to get that formulated, how to get it, off the ground. But what I will say is that it just wasn't an opportunity for me to find that other person to go and, do it with.
How about, all right, so let's fast forward to now. That's the way you started. That's the
Yeah.
way you are right now. But you got a couple people working with you.
Yeah.
Where's your mindset at today? Would you be open to a partnership
Oh, yeah.
today?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not even today, but like looking back at the way that I did start it, I would have, knowing what I know now, I would have definitely had put that on the table.
Yep.
I would
Like
have
almost gone out and maybe like
yes.
purposefully found some people
Yes.
who may have want to been a partner.
Yep. Yeah. I think in doing that, I think that would have been a completely viable option.
Yeah.
I think it's probably, looking back, would have been my preference at the time.
Yeah.
And so I definitely, not to say that I would have definitely gone down the road of making the decision to partner with someone.
Yep.
Because ultimately, I think you really need to find the person that you gel with. Like, you have to be 100% on the same page.
Yep.
And I think it's rare to find someone that is going to commit and give the energy that's needed.
Yep.
To do
I would
it.
agree.
But I still would have liked to have those conversations about, let's call it like interviewing people to partner with.
Yeah.
Because I think, and we can get into, a variety of reasons of why I think that would have been the way I would have gone about it.
It's so funny, dude. Like how you're saying it, like saying, here's where I started, didn't have the option, or at least you weren't focused on that option, which is why you went a little bit more solo. And then now today, like looking back, and you're like, you know what? Maybe I should have considered that.
Yeah.
Like for these reasons.
Yeah.
Like there's reasons to do it and reasons not to do it.
Yeah. I just think that even now, even to this day, like if I were to find someone that was, and it's hard because at this point in someone's career, I guess that you would really need to find someone that's, like there's so much you have to give up.
Yep.
In order to operate a business. And at the time, that's the other thing too, is like what I was willing to give up at the time. It's like, who else would have been willing to give up a W-2, put in some money, put in the sweat equity, work countless hours, and initially, you just don't have the money, right, to take like a high paycheck. So I don't know. It probably wouldn't have worked at the time to find that right person.
Yeah.
But I still think it's a good exercise to kind of go through it and kind of see what's out there, because maybe you do. Maybe you find that person that's like just on that same wavelength as to like, yeah, that's an unbelievable idea. Let's go do it.
Dude, it's funny. So like, it reminds me of the Zach Torres episode. What's up, Zach?
Zach.
Where one of his quotes was learn to sacrifice.
Yeah.
So he's been through that. You've been through that. I've been through that. And that really is probably one of the most foundational things about starting any business, partners or no partners, is you have to realize there is a sacrificial part to it in order to get it going. Because if you just think nothing in your life changes and you're going to start a business, unfortunately, the amount of time, effort, and money, sometimes not, but time and effort for sure, to get a business off the ground and get it moving, it's like there's no other choice but to sacrifice.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
And it's just, I've talked to people in all kinds of different industries, and, people, for a vast majority of people, there's such an unwillingness to make less money.
Yeah.
Because they view it as like a step back. Yeah. Right. And it's like, no, every step in my life has to be more.
Yeah.
And to go in reverse for some people, it just doesn't fit like how they view life and business.
Yeah. No, the high majority of people can't do what we have done just simply for that fact, because that is a requirement in order to do it. We were both making way more money
Yeah.
before we started businesses.
Yeah.
So like, that's a fact.
Yeah.
Like, and it took years to even get back to that point of saying, all right, I'm finally making the same money I left the job for
Yeah.
to get this business off the ground. So some people, it might take 6 months. Some people it takes 6 years. So there is no like equation, linear method, right or wrong way to say this is how long it's going to take. It really just depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
So as far as like, so for myself, for partnerships, I had the complete opposite approach. So when
Yeah.
I got into real estate, again, I started solo. So I didn't want to join anyone's team. So I probably had more your mindset when I first got in, because a lot of people were joining teams
Yeah.
when I first got in. Hey, I joined this team and I got an open house opportunity every weekend. Or I joined this team and they give me 3 cold leads a week that I can run out with. And I get 1 out of every 10. And then therefore I'm closing a couple deals a month because I'm on this team. I'm making X amount of dollars because I'm on this team.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I constantly heard. But I went the opposite way. I said, as much as I will do an open house, as much as I'm willing to call someone that I don't know, see if they have a real estate need that I can help with, it's not the method that I'm falling into. And most of what I saw with teams when I first got in was more like, here are all the leads we have. We need people under us to service those leads. And then this is our conversion rate. And that conversion rate turns into closed deals, which turns into volume, which turns into income, which is how you say we had a good year or a bad year. So that's what I saw. And it's way different now. Teams are they're structured differently. You know, technology has really made it easier to be associated with someone, because that's really all a team is.
Yeah.
So when I started out solo, I just said, look, I want to build this off relationships. You know, again, kind of the crux of our podcast. What do we talk about a lot in our businesses or our lives and everything that we want to share with the audience is relationships are the foundation of everything that we do. So when I got in, I just said, look, if the relationships are mine, they come from me. It's my job to either maintain, strengthen, and grow new relationships. Like, that's all going to come from me, because I want the relationship with me, because when they have a need, I service that client.
And if there was an opportunity, if you found someone that's like, oh my God, this is what I do too.
Exactly.
Like, would you have thought like, oh, maybe this is possibility?
Yeah, it was probably about 2 years in when I decided to, like, my first brokerage wasn't like a great fit, just because I had a couple needs. I said like, hey, can I get a little bit more on my split? And they're like, that's not how we do it here. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, is there something else you can help me with? Well, I don't really have a lot of bandwidth. I got some of my greatest foundational stuff from my first brokerage, Brown McKinney, which was really in blogging. Like, that idea came from Rudy Brown, who was my first broker.
Yeah.
But then when I joined US Spaces, I got to meet a lot more agents. Like, they had like 20, 25 agents. And that's when my brother Ryan Garrity got into the business. And that's where I met Andrew Janos, was at that brokerage. So when I got to that brokerage and I saw this guy growing this brokerage, I said, I think I'm going to go back and start my broker classes, because if I do that, maybe I could do what this guy's doing. And that was Fred Glick. Again, great guy, taught me a ton. So then I started taking my classes. You know, some of the classes took 3-4 full days in a row. I'm paying money. I can't practice. You know, I'm like sitting in a classroom all day. And then after 5 years, when I got that broker's license, I had Ryan and I had Andrew, to your point earlier, that said, yeah, we would be interested in that. Like, their eyes were lighting up, like my eyes were lighting up. So I did have 2 people. One was a relative, like at that spot where I just got that license, that said, we want to do it too. And we also want to do it in that way. Let's grow it organically. And I think one of the biggest lessons I can take from that I can share with the audience is, again, a tip, is when we started Copper Hill Real Estate from scratch, we looked at it as like, okay, we have to kick up $10,000 each for our first year to keep this business afloat. And if we do that, how much did we pay our last brokerage in a calendar year to work for them?
Yeah.
And it was more than $10,000. So we do the same exact amount of business and we're relationship driven. So it should be the same or better.
Right.
And we shell out that $10,000. Not only are we making more money, but we have our own brand. We have our own company. There's opportunities to scale and grow and be creative and do all sorts of different things. And that's exactly what happened. So it took me, about my first 5 years to start completely solo, get my feet wet, work for 2 different brokerages, because you work for 2 different insurance companies in your first 10 years.
Yep.
Like get 2 different perspectives, get the license and say, all right, I got 2 people right here that are ready, willing, and able to grow this thing with me. And that wasn't an option that you had.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it almost naturally it happened that I just happened to have those and you didn't at that moment we were ready to
Well, for me too,
out.
it was a timing thing. Like if I'm going to do this, I have to do this now.
Yeah.
So you kind of take what's given to you and make the most of it. And that's, the way I looked at it.
All right. So let's talk about, so we've talked about some of our experiences with partnerships.
Right.
Let's talk about the pros of a partnership. So we got a couple points here. What's a pro of having a partner to start and grow a business?
I mean, the one thing that I think of first is you can go faster, quicker, and just have more volume. You're at a different velocity when you have multiple people in your organization.
Yep.
So like speed.
Yeah, speed. You got in my example, we had 3 people at the helm of starting this thing. So technically we could do 3 times the amount of work. We could go 3 times faster.
But you had 3 networks to tap into. Everything
100%.
is kind of exponentially driven. So from that standpoint, I mean, that to me is like the number one answer as to like why or having a pro is, with one person, there's just, you can only go as fast as that.
There's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
And you got 3 kids.
Yeah.
Now you didn't have 3 kids when you started.
Right.
But still.
No. So that's, pro number 1, faster, quicker, get going, and speed at which you can go.
All right. So one thing, so you were talking about like shared resources. Hey, we got 3 networks, we got 3 different people, 3 different skill sets, possibly 3 different lanes. I think another pro is in the example I gave from Copper Hill is financial support. So again, if I wanted to do it myself year 1 and I'm like, hey, like the bottom of the barrel annual expenses are $30K to get it started, pay rent, have the tech, advertise, have insurance, all these things you need, educate yourself, all these things you need to grow your business. I would have had to take 30 grand out of my bank account in that first year. And then I think, honestly, if it were me and I was comparing it to what I was paying my last broker, it probably would have been more.
Yeah.
But when you split it up 3 ways, that was one of the reasons that really got us going. It's like, hey, it's like, if we only pay 10 grand each, like maybe we were paying him like 20, 25 at the time, maybe 30. I can't even remember.
Yeah.
So I think the financial piece is very important because it's split. Now, again, that also plays into the profit.
Yeah.
So as much as you're not putting as much money out there, you're not going to make as much money when the profit rolls in. What are your thoughts on that as far as like being solo? Because I think you had to put up, I think an episode we talked about like 20, 25 grand or so
probably
in your first year.
Yep. So I think going back to my other point where I was saying that if you can find the right person, you can tandem with another person that is on the same track that you're thinking and you can gel. My thinking with that is that you can outgrow what you'd be losing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
So like if in the first year I write $1 million of business, right? And I own 100% of that, I think with 2 people, you could go further than 2 million.
Gotcha. Yeah. You're saying it's not equal. It's not one each.
Right.
Like you could maybe go 2.5 or 3
Yeah.
if you had 2 working in that same period of time, just
Yep.
because that's the percentage of growth
Yeah.
that it would have been doing. That's a really good point.
Because everything is calculated for me in my head based on like, a multiple, right?
Yep.
So like $1 million of business, you're going to get X amount of referrals per month. You're going to write X amount of business. But when you have 2 people writing double that amount, everything kind of like grows at that additional multiple.
The compound effect
Yeah.
of 2 people working at once versus 1 person is just going to be that much greater.
Yeah.
I mean, compounding is a real thing.
Yeah.
No, that's a really good
So
point.
I think you're going to outpace what you would be doing on your own if you take it that way.
Here's another perspective from a pro of having a partner or partners is in decision making.
Yeah.
So I'll go back. I've had a few different partnerships. I've had a partnership for a real estate brokerage, partnership for a development team, partnership in a title company, partnership. I was in property management for a couple years. So I've done a few different things.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say about the pro of decision making is that, well, one, if you have partners, I feel like you have to be open-minded. And I was very, very open-minded.
Yeah, it forces you to be.
I'm such a people person. It's just the way I'm wired. And I probably am too trusting at times. Like sometimes people are like, you're too nice. Like you're too trusting. Like you give everyone the benefit of the
Do you
doubt.
want to hear my quote?
Yeah.
Here's my quote. This is a Sean P. original.
Okay.
Trusting nobody is easier than trying to pick who to trust.
You made that up?
Yeah.
That's pretty damn good.
It's pretty good, right?
Hey, Dill, can we quote that and put it on the bottom with like a dash that
Get
says
like
Sean
one of those
P?
memes with like me thinking with bubbles coming out of my head.
That would be awesome. Hey everyone, this is Tim, your favorite Bricks and Risk co-host. But don't tell Sean. I hope you're enjoying this episode, and I'll get right back to it in a moment. Our audience grows through word of mouth, so if you would please take a moment of your time and give us a review on the platform you're on, that would be fantastic. Please also help spread the B&R word by sharing your favorite episode with a friend. We greatly appreciate your time and trust. Now, back to the show. So here's the thing, like when you're making decisions, so
Yep.
like again, I'll go back to Copper Hill Real Estate.
Yeah.
We started.
Yep.
Where we want our office to be, because we needed an office for Pennsylvania State
Yeah.
to have a brokerage.
Right.
It can be the tiniest office you've ever seen, which it was, or it can be this gargantuan, it could be 10,000 square feet if you wanted to. Now, obviously, we couldn't afford 10,000 square feet, nor did we even need it or want it, but we had a tiny, tiny little
You went
office.
to Beaver County, you could probably find.
If we
something
did
you
go to
could-
Beaver County, we probably could have found maybe like an old warehouse for like a couple bucks a month. Someone's like, I'm making $0 on it now. I'll take your $5.
Yeah. Possibility.
Nothing against Beaver County.
We love Beaver County.
Yeah, we love Beaver County. So when we were finding our office space, one thing that worked well for us was like, where do we do it and why? One of our biggest drivers is like, okay, well, we have this budget. So if we have this budget in year one, the office rent can't be more than $1,000.
Yeah.
Which to some people, they're like, what? What did you find? Well, first of all, this was 2014. So things were cheaper. This was pre-crazy inflation.
Yeah.
And 2, we got creative. We found a co-working space, and that co-working space ended up being such a blessing. So not only did we find our first office space for $800 a month with utilities, because in a co-working space, that pays for your electric, that pays for your water, that pays for your gas, that pays for your internet. We had a front desk, we had a conference room, we had coffee made every day, we had networking events we could go to. All of that was included at $800 a month. So we were just getting all these like fringe benefits as well as financial benefits for doing that. But we also looked at it like strategically. Because we're relationship driven guys and we were trying to grow our networks, we're like, there's 50 different companies in this co-working space. Most of them were startups.
Yeah.
Because at the time, co-working was like fairly new in Philadelphia, as it was in most parts of the country. And you had all these like scrappy small businesses. Some of them were like tech, some were like music, art, nonprofit, other businesses. There were attorneys. And you would like go to like their wine and cheese night and just go shake hands and pass out business cards or swap info. And then you're like, yo, you going to be in tomorrow? Yeah. Why don't we meet up in the lounge and we just grab a cup of coffee, which was already paid for, and talk shop. So, dude.
Did they have charcuterie boards there with
Charcuterie?
Meat selections?
They actually had charcuterie.
I bet you they did.
And that's where I learned about triple creme brie, which is some of the best cheese in the world, in my opinion. I learned about it there, and I got a really funny story.
We'll have to ask Dennis
about how my brother Ryan got grossed out by triple creme, but we won't go on this episode, but it was pretty funny.
We could bring Dennis on the show. He's a good cheese guy.
We could. We definitely could.
JP Sales.
So that, like, the decision-making support to do something, there was no one that I knew of. I bet you we were the first. I bet you, if I actually researched it, to headquarter a residential real estate brokerage in the city of Philadelphia at a co-working space.
Dylan,
look it up.
Dylan, can you fact check that?
I want someone to fact check that for me, because I bet you it's true. And if not, it's like a 90% chance it's true.
I'm going to have Dennis fact check your cheese too.
Cool. I appreciate it. Just Philadelphia.
Yeah.
See if you can find any residential real estate companies that were in co-working spaces.
There's probably
pre-2014.
Probably some guy somewhere.
Could be. So that brings me back to the decision-making support. Like, because there were three of us, we're like, what are the pros of doing this? What are the cons of doing this? What's the perceived value? Like, is it innovative? People are going to be like, what are you, nuts? And most people said we were nuts. And then there were some people we meet and they're like, that's really smart. I bet you it's a lot cheaper. We're like, it is. And we're like, and we're a paperless residential brokerage. So we're like, what?
So what other avenues were you looking at though? Like, what was on the table? So if you landed on the shared space, which worked out great and it fit everything that you were looking to do.
Yep.
Like, what other alternatives were on the table that you were discussing at the time? Or was there none, because it's like,
no,
all right.
There were. It'd be like, the thing about, like, if you're a Philadelphia and you're from this area, or you've been to Philadelphia, you walk down Walnut Street in Center City, which is where we started.
Yeah.
And there's tiny little storefronts. You might be able to get 500 square feet, maybe 1,000.
Oh yeah, wasn't that the U.S. Spaces? Didn't they have a?
Yeah, they were on Chestnut for a while. I think they were in a shared space for a little bit.
Yeah.
So, like, that was your alternative.
Yeah.
Going up in a big building at that point wasn't it. To just have an office, there weren't any spaces that were small enough.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say we wanted to get a commercial space in, like, a high-rise downtown. Most of that was like
5,000
the minimum
square
was
feet.
like, it was big.
Yeah.
But you could find these little spaces downtown that offered that. Plus, you could go out to a neighborhood. You go out to a Manayunk, Roxborough, like Passyunk Square. You go to Fairmount. You can go to Fishtown, Northern Liberties, like any of these spots, like Queen Village, Graduate Hospital, and find 500,000 square feet for maybe like 2 G's. And at the time, we're like, well, that's not a terrible deal, but it's still almost triple what we're paying to be at a fantastic location in Center City with all of our utilities included, which is another factor, and meet all these companies. So I think just having all that is literally, like, the benefits of it were like, there's not going to be a better option. But not everyone thought that way. Not everyone said, like, I can grow my business through the co-working model.
Yeah.
So it was new territory. Most people said we were crazy. There were a few that were like, that's really smart. That was cool.
Mikey G might question how you said Passyunk.
He would. Mike is Passyunk. You're from Philly. I say Passyunk because I also say water. I don't really say water anymore.
You say what?
I say water. I say water ice. They give me a glass of water.
Go.
Well, my wife's from Colorado.
We're not friends.
She's helped me out a little bit.
Decision making.
We're not friends.
Pro side, I'd like to weigh in on. It's amazing. I can't imagine having 3 guys, gals on a team, and a decision needs to be made. I mean, you can have a decision, 1, 2, no, like, nope, we're not doing it. That's the final decision. Why that's so great is because when you are a solo operator, you have to make every single decision
by yourself.
And
it takes a while.
It can be a paralyzing event.
Paralysis by analysis.
Yeah. And so what about this? What about this? Because
you're like, what do you think, Sean? I don't know, Sean. What do you think? That's a pretty good point, Sean.
Literally.
Yeah.
That's, I mean,
Yeah, seriously.
so I'm envious of that situation because I'm kind of the mindset is like, I don't really care. Like I'll weigh in on certain things and I'll like want to do this or want to do that. But at the end of the day, if it were a group,
Mhm.
I would be like, okay, that's what we're doing. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so having that is like a luxury to me in my mind because it's like I can't tell you. Could be like 1,000 decisions a day
Right.
with clients and carriers and
What should I do? What should I
IT
do?
and
Should I make good on that? Should I not work with them anymore?
yeah,
Should I make less money? Like, should I do this? Well, all right. So let's do this. As nice as that sounds, let's get into some of the cons.
yeah, sure,
Let's get into some of the moons.
yeah.
The glass half empty.
Let's.
Just call them the moons.
This is my specialty.
So
Con.
some cons. Here's a con that kind of feeds off of the decision-making pro we were just talking about is conflict.
Yeah,
This is a very real thing in partnerships. As agonizing as it can be to make a decision yourself, it's up to you and only you to say, this is the direction. Here's the fork in the road. I'm either going right or I'm going left. You don't have to ask someone else if we're going right or left. You're just going to pick one. Now, you might not go the right way, or maybe you got better odds if you have someone else, but the conflict part of decision making in a partnership, I will say, can also be paralyzing to the point where I'll go back to the brokerage. When we had to make decisions on things, we had a rule that basically said if we can't agree unanimously, then majority rules. So you had 3 partners. If there were 2 votes, that's the way you were going.
Mhm.
I will say, out of all the voting we did in almost 10 years, probably count on 2 hands the amount of major decisions that actually required a vote.
Yeah.
Of us physically raising our hands and saying this is the direction we're going. And was the one odd man out pissed off? Yes, they were. I was the odd man out sometimes, as was Ryan, as was Andrew. But the decisions were still being made. Not only that, so I think there's conflict from a decision-making standpoint. I think conflict can also come into play is insofar as vision. Where do we want to go with this company? Because out of the 4 partnerships I've named, 2 of them didn't work out. You know, the brokerage, that isn't an existing partnership anymore, and neither is the property management. Those partnerships didn't work out.
Yeah.
The other 2 are great.
Yeah.
Most of why those decisions, no, I'm going to say not most, one of the reasons why those partnerships did not work out was also, where are we going with this thing? Like, how fast? How are we getting there? Like, and minds change all the time. Like I've said in a past episode, people get married, like people buy a bigger house, people get a nicer car, like people have children, people have pets, people want to go on vacation more. All these things that change in your personal life are also going to change your perspective on the vision, because a lot of the vision comes down to like, how long is this going to take and how much money are we going to make?
Yeah.
Because like we talked about in the beginning, we both took steps back when we started the business and then got to a point where we're making more. But then what do? You're almost like, should we put some of that money back in the business so I can make even more than that? So it's constant like step back to go step forward. So what are your thoughts on the conflict part, knowing that you've always been a team of one since you've been doing this, as far as like the major decisions?
Yeah. So there, I mean, I said it before, is like there's value in having, multiple people weigh in. I can't imagine the scenario where it's a partnership of 2, right?
That's hard.
Your gears would be grinding so much.
3 was good because there was always,
it was easy.
someone was always leaning one way or the other.
Right. So I can imagine that if it's a partnership of 2, you're not always going to see things the same way.
Right.
So there's always going to be a potential for conflict there. And yes, decision making for one does have a benefit of, you make the decision, you live with the decision, and sometimes you even realize that it is the wrong decision,
right,
when it's made, but you're forced to like live in it.
Yeah.
And there's really no, you can wallow in it, right? But like, if you decide that decisions are made and moving forward, then that's the practice that you have, and that's how you operate the business. And it's, that was yesterday.
Give me your trust quote again. How'd that go?
So in life, it's easier to trust nobody than to pick and choose who to trust.
Dude, that's really good. What you just said leads me to a quote that I've always said. I know this is not mine, or maybe I've worded it this way, but I always say you have to fail in order to succeed. And I keep it very blunt like that, because even when you're a solo business owner, you don't have any partners to make decisions with. When you make those decisions, like you said, that sometimes they don't work out, that is failing.
Yeah.
And when you fail, the next time you have to make a decision of a similar nature, let's say it was a marketing decision, I'll try this and it didn't work. Then you're that much smarter to say, all right, well, here are the reasons why that didn't work. Maybe it was money, maybe it was time, maybe it was effort, maybe it was just like in how quality it was versus quantity. Like there's many reasons why marketing doesn't work. But failing is still allowing you to succeed. And maybe the process takes a little bit longer because you're making all these decisions, and then therefore you're the one who has to realize when they're not working. And you don't have two other people or one other person banging on our door like, yo, we can't do this anymore because we're not getting anywhere. It's costing too much money. What have we brought in? Customer acquisition costs we were BSing about before.
Yeah.
Like, what's the customer acquisition cost and why are we doing this? It's like, you have to do that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times too, and I say it often, that sometimes you learn the most from your errors, from your mistakes.
Totally, man.
So I think that sometimes even those are blessings in disguise.
They are. Because
you're probably, hopefully not going to do it again, or you get to critically think, oh, why did this happen? How did this happen?
Yep.
And then you're building the road forward with that in mind to, avoid that in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes actually the failures are opportunities, because when something's not working out, you could say, all right, well, if this didn't work out, like for me, when the brokerage partnership ended, okay, well, what's my next opportunity? What am I going to do? And it really ended up being a blessing, because I went from solo agent to two partners to growing a pretty good size independent brokerage by most people's standards, not only in the amount of time that we did, but also just in general, to now going back to being the sole decision maker, and then having like a group of people that still work with me, that are still following me. I'm still leading them. I don't need to go to them for decisions. Do I get ideas? Do we communicate? Do we collaborate? 100%.
Yeah.
But the decision maker is me. So I've gone back. I went full circle back to being solo. And I will say, like, it actually brings me to another con is a con of a partnership is shared profits. Because again, as you're growing something, most of the time people like the word growth. So if we started a team of 3 at the brokerage and grew it to, 10 million in volume, let's say in like our first year, we took it all the way up to almost 100 million in less than 10 years that we did 1 year. Like, you're almost like, well, how do we get to 200? Or how do we get to 500? Or how do we get to 1 billion? Like, these aren't the things that we discussed, but when you have shared profits and shared decisions, sometimes people are like, I don't want to bring that money home. I want to throw it back into the business. I want to pour gasoline on the fire. I want to print more money because of the money I'm investing in it. Whereas sometimes, and I think going full circle with this whole thing, one thing I've enjoyed about going back to being the sole decision maker is you got to pay yourself first. It's almost like the philosophy that a lot of people say with health. Like, you got to take care of yourself first if you're going to take care of your family. You can't be in poor health and then expect you to be in a right state of mind, or physically or mentally, to then take care of others, whether it's a spouse and children or pets or whatever, or grandparents or parents or cousins. Like, you have to take care of yourself first to a point, and then you'll have the strength or the resources to help others. And going back to being the sole decision maker for me has been pretty nice.
Yeah.
Because now I have more time to think. I have more resources. I have more direction. Like I'm doing my 2025 annual planning right now for next year for the Tim Garrity team. And I'm like, okay, it doesn't look like here are like 4 or 5 streams of income for next year that I want to focus on. And I wouldn't be focusing on those if I was still in a partnership, which is interesting. So what are your thoughts on that? Because you've been, hey, you're not sharing your profit. I mean, you have employees.
I think it goes back to the original point of, we don't share, but owning 100% of 50 may not be as good as owning 50% of 200.
I mean, Mark Cuban used to say, owning 100% of a grape is less than owning 50% of a watermelon. So he always made that example. It's like, as much as you feel like you're giving up half your company to someone else, what would you rather have? Half of a watermelon or a whole grape?
Yeah.
And that goes to your point. It might only get this big, or it could ever get this big if I'm flying solo. If I have another mind or minds, people that are vested, that are going the same direction, that can put in half the work, half the money, half the ideas, like maybe it turns into a watermelon.
Yeah. It's just also finding that person when it is a partnership, to get on the same page as to how big do you want to get?
Do you prefer watermelons over grapes? What do you like better? If you had to take your pick, a bowl of grapes or a nice big slice of watermelon, what would you like?
I go watermelon.
Go watermelon too.
Yeah. Shared profits. Yeah, it's just, there is also too that all the decisions, all the financial decisions, like I get to call the shots,
Yep.
So there's a benefit for sure.
And one last one I wanted to bring up was another con of a partnership is in liability. So again, when you're in a partnership structure, there can be personal liability, because it's not like if you're just one person and you own an LLC or an S corp or something like that, it's really like that's your shield. When there's multiple people involved, again, I'm not an attorney or an accountant, there's different levels of risk which can pose financial problems. So that's another aspect to a partnership. And then again, you have 3 different opinions or 2 different opinions or 5 different opinions on how we handle that.
Well, you're attaching yourself, right? So now not only are you responsible for your own decisions and actions, right? But now you're being brought in to being attached to these other people, their decisions, posting something stupid online. Well, that's you,
right?
Yep. Financial decisions too. I mean, on the news, right? So this person's embezzling this money,
right?
So there's when you get involved in those partnerships, there's other avenues that you get attached to, for better or for worse.
Yeah, man. So when are you going to get a partner? I'm calling them out, folks.
Yeah. Not that I'm it would be more like I'm not itching to do that. It would be, wow, I just met this guy and gal and they're talking my language. Right. They view this industry, or they view an agency the exact same way that I view the agency.
Yeah.
And I think it would be that maybe then furthered to a conversation. It's like, okay, well, what would this look like? You know what I mean? It would be a few steps in between to kind of get to that point.
What's also interesting is that, because you started out the way you started out at Mooney Insurance Brokers, and you're like, I didn't really have anyone that was going in that direction or was driven, or like that I knew, that I felt like I could trust. And now that you're 12 years in?
Yeah.
Now that you're 12 years in, and you've been going that whole journey, you know, by yourself. But I mean, now you have 10 million, you know, podcast fans,
Right.
you know, screaming and banging on your office door. You got that deadbolt locked, and they're like, "Can I have your autograph?" And you're like, "I don't know. I'm busy."
11 million.
Okay, 11 million. Gotcha. So now that you have all that experience and you're more experienced, but you're more open-minded. Like you had said, you're like, if I look back on it, like I
Yeah.
would have done a partnership. Maybe I would have looked harder for a partnership.
Yeah.
So now you're probably looking much harder than you were before because you're like, hey, if I come across the right person, like I would consider that.
Very similar in what I said previously in naming my agency, right? Like I said, I use Mooney Insurance, but now looking back, I probably would have done that differently.
Yep.
Right. Same with like a partner, you know, I think starting with a partner could have been the way that I went, you know, if I had to do it again.
It's interesting. Awesome, man. All right. Well, why don't you tell the folks what they need to know if they want to reach out, support the show?
Listen, everyone.
That rhymed.
We know that you're enjoying the show today. And if you'd like to drop us a note, it's very simple. bricksandrisk@gmail.com. Shoot us an email. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you didn't like, but let us know. Apple Podcast, drop a review. Find us on YouTube.
That's the written review. Remember, Apple Podcast for written reviews.
Right.
Spotify's just stars.
Oh.
That's all you can do.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Get with it, bro.
Or drop us a DM on the Instagram. That's what the kids like to do.
Like Bobby Hort.
Bobby Hort.
That was the best DM I've ever seen.
Come back.
All right. Well, that's all we have for this one, folks. Thank you for tuning in again to another episode of Bricks and Risk. See you soon. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Bricks and Risk. Our goal is that you walk away with 1 or 2 valuable nuggets, and we greatly appreciate you sharing your time with us today. You can find all B&R episodes on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, and anywhere else you get your podcast content. Until next time, keep learning and keep growing.